elderly woman can't afford medicine. What Keanu Reeves does will inspire you. Where are you watching this video from? Please comment and let us know. Also, don't forget to like the video and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. A crisp breeze swept through the quiet neighborhood as the golden hues of late afternoon painted the sky. The bell above the entrance of the small corner pharmacy jingled softly as an elderly woman shuffled inside. Her frail frame was wrapped in a worn beige coat, and her hands, marked by age, trembled slightly as she clutched a small handbag close to her chest. The shelves were neatly stacked with colorful boxes of remedies and wellness products, but the place was mostly empty except for a polite pharmacist behind the counter and a tall man dressed casually in a faded jacket and cap, standing quietly a few steps away. The woman hesitated for a moment before approaching the counter, her worn shoes scuffing against the tiled floor. The pharmacist greeted her with a professional yet kind smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help you today?" he asked. I need to fill this prescription," she said softly, placing a crumpled slip on the counter. As the pharmacist scanned the paper, the elderly woman shifted nervously, her anxious eyes darting toward her handbag. Behind her, the man in the cap, none other than Keanu Reeves. Though no one seemed to recognize him, watched silently, his face calm but attentive. "That'll be $186.72, the pharmacist announced after a moment. The woman's face paled. Her fingers fumbled with the clasp of her handbag as she pulled out a small pouch filled with coins and a few wrinkled bills. She counted them slowly, her lips moving as she added up each cent. Her shoulders sagged. I don't have enough," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Can I pay part of it now and come back with the rest?" The pharmacist's smile faded, replaced by a look of sympathy mixed with the weight of store policy. "I'm so sorry, ma'am, but we're not allowed to split payments for prescriptions. I wish I could help." Keanu's brow furrowed as he continued to observe the scene. The woman's hands trembled as she began gathering her meager coins, preparing to leave without the medicine she clearly needed. And that was when Keanu quietly stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said gently, his voice warm and reassuring. "I've got this." The woman turned, bewildered, her tear-filled eyes meeting the kind gaze of a stranger whose simple act of compassion was about to change everything. The pharmacy grew eerily silent, save for the faint rustle of receipts and the hum of fluorescent lights. The elderly woman's face tightened with worry as she clutched the prescription slip in her hand, hesitating before glancing up at the pharmacist. "Are you sure there's no way I can pay part now and the rest later?" she asked again, her voice shaky with desperation. "I don't have enough on me, but I can come back tomorrow." The pharmacist offered a sympathetic nod, though the rigidity of company rules bound his response. "I wish I could help, ma'am, but we're not allowed to split payments for prescriptions," he explained gently. "It's store policy." The woman's frail hands trembled as she emptied the contents of her worn handbag onto the counter. A mix of crumpled dollar bills and scattered coins rolled out, barely making a dent in the total amount. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she desperately counted and recounted the money, willing it to be more than it was. Keanu, standing a respectful distance behind her, tilted his head slightly, observing the scene unfold with quiet empathy. The tension in the air was palpable, her growing distress unmistakable. I need this medicine," the woman pleaded softly, glancing back at the prescription as if hoping for a miracle. It's for my heart condition. I can't go without it." The pharmacist's face softened, but he remained firm. "I understand, ma'am, and I'm really sorry, but I can't authorize any exceptions." The woman bit her lip, blinking rapidly as tears threatened to spill over. I don't know what to do." Keanu's jaw clenched subtly. He had seen enough. The weight of her struggles stirred something deep within him. Compassion flickered in his eyes as he took a step forward, his calm voice cutting gently through the tension. "Excuse me," he said quietly, addressing both the woman and the pharmacist. "How much is the bill?" The elderly woman turned, startled by the stranger's unexpected interjection. She opened her mouth to protest, but Keanu's steady gaze and kind demeanor silenced her objections before they could form. "I'd like to take care of it," he continued, his tone humble yet resolute. "Please let me help." The woman's lips quivered as disbelief washed over her face. The pharmacist hesitated, clearly stunned. You don't have to," the woman stammered, shaking her head. "I can't let you." "It's all right," Keanu said softly, offering a reassuring smile. "Everyone needs a little help sometimes." The air in the room seemed to shift as hope flickered in the elderly woman's eyes for the first time that afternoon. Keanu's simple but profound act of kindness was about to turn a day filled with despair into a moment of inspiration. Neither of them would forget. The elderly woman let out a weary sigh, the sound heavy with resignation. Her shoulders sagged beneath the weight of disappointment as she swept the scattered coins and crumpled bills back into her worn handbag. "I understand," she murmured to the pharmacist, forcing a weak smile through her embarrassment. "I'll figure something out. Maybe next month." Her voice faltered as she turned toward the door, ready to leave without the medication she so desperately needed. The thought gnawed at her. What if there wouldn't be a next month? Before she could take another step, a warm but firm hand gently rested on her shoulder. "Ma'am," Keanu said softly, his voice steady yet compassionate. Startled, she looked up into the kind face of the tall man standing behind her. His deep brown eyes radiated empathy. "Please, let me help," he continued. "I can't let you do that," she protested weakly, shaking her head. "You don't even know me. You don't have to." Keanu smiled gently. "That's exactly why I should." He turned to the pharmacist. "How much is the total? And if there are any other essentials she needs, please add them to the bill." The pharmacist blinked in surprise, then cleared his throat. "It's $186.72. Sir," he said hesitantly, still processing the sudden shift in events. The elderly woman's eyes widened, shimmering with disbelief. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. No, I can't accept that. It's far too much," she insisted, her voice cracking. "You've already done more than enough by offering." Keanu shook his head gently. "Please," he said earnestly, "think of it as a gift from one stranger to another. You've probably spent your whole life giving to others. Maybe today it's your turn to receive." The weight of his words hung in the air, dissolving her resistance. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time, they were not tears of despair. They were tears of gratitude and disbelief at the kindness of a stranger who refused to let her walk away empty-handed. "You have no idea what this means to me," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Keanu smiled softly. "It means something to me too." The moment was simple but powerful, a testament to the unexpected beauty of compassion and how a single act of kindness could change everything. The woman stood frozen for a moment, tears welling in her eyes as Keanu's words settled into her heart. His voice was gentle yet unwavering. "Everyone needs a little help sometimes," he said with a reassuring smile. "Please, let me do this for you. No strings attached." She wiped at her damp cheek with a trembling hand. "You don't understand," she murmured, her voice catching. "It's just been so hard since my husband passed." Keanu's expression softened even further, his brows knitting in sympathy. We were married for 47 years. She continued, her voice thick with emotion. He was a proud man, worked as a mechanic his whole life. Even when things got tough, we always managed to get by. She sniffled, her fingers clenching the strap of her worn handbag. But after he passed, the bills kept piling up. Sometimes I wonder how I've made it this far. Keanu nodded, his quiet demeanor inviting her to share more without judgment. We didn't have much, but we had each other. He would have hated seeing me like this, struggling just to buy medicine. She added with a sad laugh. He used to say, "We're rich in love, and that's all that matters." There was a long pause as she composed herself, visibly embarrassed for rambling. "I'm sorry," she said, shaking her head. "You didn't need to hear all that." "No, I'm glad you told me," Keanu said sincerely. "He sounds like a wonderful man." The woman managed a faint smile through her tears. "He really was." Keanu's voice remained warm. "It's clear he gave you a lot of strength. And now it's okay for someone else to help you. Just like he would have wanted." Her defenses melted completely under the weight of his kindness. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can never repay you for this." "You already have," Keanu replied gently, "by sharing that beautiful story." The pharmacist, visibly moved by the heartfelt exchange, quietly began bagging the medicine. The atmosphere in the small pharmacy shifted from one of cold routine to something warmer, something deeply human. Keanu turned back to the pharmacist, his voice low and purposeful. "Can you please ring it up?" The pharmacist nodded, still visibly touched by the scene. Keanu reached into his wallet, pulling out a sleek black card. "Also," he added thoughtfully, "can you add a gift card for her next purchases? Let's make it a couple hundred." The pharmacist's eyes widened slightly, but he nodded without hesitation. "Absolutely, sir." The elderly woman, overwhelmed, shook her head in disbelief. "You've already done too much," she whispered, her voice still thick with emotion. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Keanu smiled warmly as the pharmacist discreetly prepared the gift card and bagged the medication. "You don't have to repay me. Just take care of yourself," Keanu said gently. "That's all I ask." As the pharmacist handed over the bag, Keanu leaned in slightly. "One more thing," he requested quietly. "Keep her account open. If she ever comes back in need, put it on this card. Don't tell her, just let her get what she needs." The pharmacist blinked, surprised but impressed by the anonymous generosity. "Of course. I'll make a note of it." Keanu offered a brief nod of thanks and turned back to the woman. "They've got you covered here for a while," he said cheerfully, trying to lighten the mood. The elderly woman clutched the bag of medicine close to her chest. Her lips quivered. But this time it was not from distress. It was the overwhelming relief of a burden lifted, and the kindness of a stranger who had restored her hope. "Thank you," she whispered again, her voice breaking. "God bless you." Keanu simply smiled. "Take care, ma'am." And with that, he turned and quietly left the pharmacy, leaving behind not just a gift of medicine, but a lasting reminder that compassion still existed, even in the most unexpected places. The elderly woman clutched the bag of medicine tightly, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. She tried to steady herself, but the weight of emotions threatened to overwhelm her. "You're not just kind," she said softly, voice trembling. "You're an angel without wings." Keanu's lips curved into a modest smile. "I'm just a guy," he said humbly, "but I'm glad I could help." A few other customers in the pharmacy, who had quietly witnessed the heartwarming exchange, murmured amongst themselves. Some had recognized Keanu despite his casual attire and the low cap shielding his face. Yet no one approached or intruded, moved instead by the quiet dignity of what they had just seen. The elderly woman reached for his hand, squeezing it briefly before letting go. "I'll never forget this," she whispered. "You just take care of yourself." Keanu replied warmly, tipping his cap. "That's enough for me." As he made his way toward the door, the pharmacist, who had been silently watching the entire encounter, offered a knowing smile and a respectful nod. No words were necessary. The gesture alone spoke volumes. Keanu returned the nod, a silent acknowledgement of shared understanding, and stepped outside into the chilly evening air. The door closed behind him with a gentle chime, leaving behind a room filled with warmth, hope, and the lingering reminder that sometimes, even the smallest gestures could make all the difference. As the elderly woman stood quietly near the pharmacy counter, cradling the medicine bag in her hands, a new warmth blossomed within her heart, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. The weight of worry, so familiar and persistent, seemed to dissolve into the background. What Keanu had done wasn't just about money or medicine. It was about dignity, compassion, and seeing another human being not as a burden, but as someone worthy of care. She smiled softly to herself, reflecting on the kindness of a stranger who had no reason to step in but did anyway. His simple act had not only eased her immediate burden but reignited something long dormant: hope. The pharmacist, too, seemed changed by the encounter. He watched the woman with a thoughtful expression, as though reconsidering the rules and policies he'd enforced for years without question. Sometimes, he realized, there was more to doing the right thing than simply following the rules. Outside, Keanu walked along the quiet sidewalk, blending back into the world as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But the ripples of his compassion lingered, transforming hearts in ways unseen. The moral was clear and simple: acts of kindness, no matter how small or grand, had the power to restore faith in humanity. Whether it was an anonymous gift, a kind word, or a helping hand, compassion carried within it the potential to change lives often, when someone needed it most.